The stranger, my supposed mate, that monster, stood perfectly still. His eyes fixed on me with an expression I couldn't read. The other wolves from the Schattenrudel melted out of the shadows around him, at least 20 of them, outnumbering our group 2-1. Kaspar, Dietrich growled, and I realized with a sickening jolt that this was him. This was the Alpha who'd been terrorizing our territory. This was the wolf the moon had marked as mine. Kaspar raised one hand, and his wolves stopped advancing. He continued to stare at me, and I saw something flicker across his face. Surprise, perhaps, or recognition. He felt it too. "Bon. This changes things," he said, his voice deep and rough like gravel and smoke. He spoke the old tongue, the language of our ancestors. "She comes with me." "The hell she does," snarled Dietrich. "You've killed our wolves, violated our territory, and now you think you can claim." "The moon has claimed," Kaspar interrupted, his eyes still locked on mine. "The bond is made. She is my mate, whether either of us wants it or not." I found my voice then, and it came out as a howl of pure rage and anguish. "You killed him!" I screamed, clutching Wendelin tighter. "You killed my mate. You killed Wendelin. The bond means nothing. I will never accept you. Never." For the first time, emotion crossed Kaspar's face. Something that might have been pain or regret or both. "He fought well," Kaspar said quietly. "He died defending his pack. There is honor in that. Don't you dare speak of honor. You're a murderer. Monster. And I would rather die than accept a bond with you." The words hung in the cold air between us. Around us, wolves from both packs shifted uneasily, sensing the tension, the impossibility of the situation. The mate bond was absolute, sacred. To reject it was to invite madness, to condemn both wolves to a half-life of pain and longing. But how could I accept the man who'd killed Wendelin? How could the moon be so cruel? Kaspar took a step forward, and immediately a dozen wolves moved to intercept him. He stopped, raising his hands in a gesture of peace that seemed absurd given the carnage around us. "I will give you time," he said, speaking directly to me. "Grieve your dead. Bury your mate with honor. But know this, Adelheid." And hearing my name from his lips felt like violation and intimacy all at once. "The bond will not be denied. When next we meet we will talk. And you will understand that things are not as simple as they seem." "There's nothing to understand," I whispered. "You killed him. That's all that matters." Kaspar held my gaze for a long moment, those gold eyes burning with something I couldn't name. Then he nodded once, sharp and final. "Perhaps," he said. "Or perhaps you'll learn that the moon's wisdom runs deeper than our understanding." He shifted, that massive midnight wolf with silver markings, and with a gesture, his pack melted back into the forest. Within moments, it was as if they'd never been there at all. Except for the bodies. Except for the blood. Except for Wendelin, growing cold in my arms. The next days passed in a blur of grief and ritual. We prepared the bodies according to tradition, washing them with water from the sacred spring, wrapping them in linen woven from mountain flax. Wendelin's parents arrived, his mother's howls of anguish echoing through the valley like a death song. The burial ceremony was held at dawn, as was custom. We returned the bodies to the earth in the grove where the oldest pines stood, trees that had watched over our pack for generations. The entire pack was there, over 200 wolves standing in human form, heads bowed in respect. Old Apollonia led the ceremony, her voice cracking with age and sorrow as she spoke the ancient words. "From moon and earth we came, to moon and earth we return. The body fails but the spirit runs eternal, joining the great pack in the sky. Until the last moon falls we remember. Until the stars grow cold we honor." When it came time to say my personal goodbye, I knelt by Wendelin's grave, my hands pressed against the fresh earth. "I'm so sorry," I whispered. "I'm so sorry I couldn't protect you. I'm so sorry I wasn't there. I'm so sorry that even now, in death, I betray you." 'Cause that's what it felt like. Every moment since the bond had snapped into place, I'd felt Kaspar like a shadow at the edge of my consciousness. Not thoughts exactly, but impressions, emotions, a presence that was always there, always aware, always connected. It felt like cheating on Wendelin's memory, even though I wanted nothing more than to sever the bond completely. After the ceremony, Dietrich pulled me aside. Our Alpha looked older than his 50 years, the weight of his responsibilities carved into the lines around his eyes. "What will you do?" he asked gently. I shook my head. "I don't know. How can I accept a bond with Wendelin's killer? But how can I reject what the moon has ordained?" "The moon's ways are mysterious," Dietrich said carefully. "But in all my years, I've never heard of the moon bonding a wolf to their mate's killer. There must be more to this story." "What more could there be?" I asked bitterly. "I saw what I saw. Wendelin died by his hand. Did you see the actual killing blow?" I opened my mouth to say yes, then stopped. I'd seen the aftermath. I'd seen Wendelin dying, Kaspar standing over him. But the actual moment of death. Well, does it matter? Yes. He was there. His pack attacked ours. Wendelin is dead. Dietrich sighed. "I'm not defending what happened. 7 of our wolves are dead, including your mate. The Schattenrudel will answer for this. But the mate bond. Adelheid, you can't ignore it. It will drive you mad. It will kill you both eventually." "Then let it kill me," I said. "I don't want to live in a world where Wendelin is gone and the moon expects me to bond with his murderer." "You say that now in your grief. But the bond will grow stronger. Already, I can see it affecting you." He was right. Even as we spoke, I could feel Kaspar's presence, distant but distinct. And worse, beneath my grief and rage, I could feel the pull. The desire to go to him, to complete the bond, to give in to what the moon demanded. Made me sick. I spent the next weeks in a haze, unable to eat, unable to sleep. The bond gnawed at me constantly, an ache that grew sharper with each passing day. I tried to distract myself with patrol duties, with hunting, with anything that would keep my mind occupied. But nothing worked. The pack was generous with their support, but I could see the worry in their eyes. They knew what happened to wolves who rejected their mates. The madness that crept in slowly, the way the wolf and human sides began to tear apart, unable to exist in harmony without the mate bond's completion. It was old Apollonia who finally came to me, appearing at my den one evening like a ghost from the forest. "You need to speak with him," she said without preamble. "No," I said flatly. "Child," she said, and her voice was surprisingly gentle. "I have lived through 3 centuries. Have seen much, learned much. And I tell you this, the moon does not make mistakes. Not in this. Then the moon is cruel. The moon is wise. There is a difference." She moved to sit beside me, her ancient bones creaking. "I saw something in the mists on your wedding day. A shadow across your future. I thought it was death, but now I wonder if it was transformation." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that Kaspar's arrival in your life, terrible as it seems, may be necessary. That there are currents moving beneath the surface that we cannot see." "He killed Wendelin. Are you certain?" The question made me pause. What else could have happened? "Many things, child. War is chaos. Death comes from many directions." She reached out and took my hand, her skin paper-thin and cool. "I'm not asking you to forgive. I'm not asking you to accept. I'm asking you to seek truth. For your own sake, if nothing else. The bond will not release you, and fighting it will only destroy you." After she left, I sat in the darkness for hours, wrestling with her words. Finally, as the moon rose full and bright above the mountains, I made my decision. I would find Kaspar. I would demand answers. And then, somehow, I would find a way to break this cursed bond. The Schattenrudel's territory was in the northern valleys, where the mountains grew steeper and the winters more brutal. I went alone, over Dietrich's protests, traveling by night in my wolf form. The journey took 2 days, and the entire time I could feel Kaspar's awareness of my approach. He knew I was coming. Their camp was in a hidden valley, protected on 3 sides by sheer cliffs. As I approached, wolves appeared from the shadows, at least a dozen of them, forming a corridor that led deeper into the territory. None of them attacked, but their message was clear. I was allowed to pass, but I was being watched. Kaspar waited in the center of the camp, standing in human form before a large fire. As I emerged from the trees, he turned to face me, and I felt the bond surge, trying to pull me toward him. I resisted, planting my paws and forcing myself to remain still. He gestured, and his wolves withdrew, giving us space. Then he spoke, his voice carrying easily in the cold air. "Adelheid, I wondered when you would come." I shifted to human form, not caring that I was naked and vulnerable in the heart of enemy territory. That was the way of wolves. The human form was just another skin, nothing to be ashamed of. "I want answers," I said, my voice hard. "I want the truth about what happened that night." Kaspar studied me for a long moment, and I was struck again by how the gold of his eyes seemed to glow in the firelight. He moved to a pile of furs and pulled out a cloak, which he tossed to me. I caught it reflexively. "You'll freeze," he said simply. "I don't care." "I do." The words hung between us, heavy with meaning. The bond pulsed, and I saw him feel it too, saw the way his jaw tightened, the way his hands clenched at his sides. "Please," he said, and there was no command in it, only request. "Cover yourself, sit by the fire, and I will tell you everything." Against my better judgment, I wrapped the cloak around my shoulders and sat. Not close to him, but close enough to the fire to feel its warmth. Kaspar remained standing, staring into the flames as he began to speak. "My pack was not always the Schattenrudel," he started. "Once we were the Bergwachter, the mountain guardians. We lived in the high passes, in territory that had been ours for 20 generations. "I know this," I said impatiently. "You were displaced by human expansion. That doesn't justify." "Let me finish," he said, and there was enough command in his voice that my wolf responded, quieting. He noticed, and his lips quirked in something that wasn't quite a smile. "The bond works both ways, it seems." I glared at him but said nothing. "The humans didn't just displace us," Kaspar continued. "They hunted us. Systematically, methodically. They had weapons we'd never seen before, technology that could track us even in our wolf forms. And they were led by a man who knew our ways, who understood our weaknesses. A wolf who'd turned traitor. Guess. Worse. A wolf who'd been exiled from your pack 20 years ago. His name was Thibaut. The name meant nothing to me, but I made a mental note to ask Dietrich about it later. Thibaut had studied the humans, learned their ways, and he used that knowledge to help them hunt my people. In 6 months we lost over half our pack. Elders, cubs, everyone. The survivors had nowhere to go. We tried to negotiate with the surrounding packs, but no one wanted to take in 200 displaced wolves. Resources were scarce, territories were full. We were turned away again and again. His voice had grown rough with emotion, and despite myself, I felt a twinge of sympathy. I crushed it ruthlessly. "So you decided to take territory by force." "I decided to save my pack," Kaspar corrected. "By any means necessary. Yes, we scouted your territory. Yes, I plan to challenge Dietrich for control. In our world, that is our right. Trial by combat, winner takes all. But you didn't challenge Dietrich. You attacked our scouts. You killed Wendelin and 6 others." "No," Kaspar said, and his eyes met mine with startling intensity. "I didn't." My heart stuttered. "What?" That night, I was leading a small group to request a formal challenge meeting with Dietrich. We were on our way to your pack's central grounds when we heard fighting. By the time we arrived, your wolves were already under attack. "That's impossible. We saw your wolves there." I saw you standing over Wendelin." "Yes," Kaspar said quietly. "Because I was trying to save him." The world seemed to tilt. "What?" "Your wolves were ambushed by rogues, Adelheid. At least 15 of them, maybe more. They disguised their scent somehow, masked their approach. By the time we arrived, the fighting was already brutal. I tried to intervene, tried to drive the rogues off. I managed to kill several of them, but... He closed his eyes. I was too late for most of your wolves. When I reached Wendelin, he was already dying. No, I whispered. No, you're lying. I knelt beside him, tried to assess his wounds, see if there was any way to save him. That's when you arrived. That's when the bond snapped into place. He opened his eyes and I saw pain there, real and raw. Do you think I wanted this? Do you think I wanted to be bonded to a wolf who would hate me for circumstances beyond my control? The other wolves, I said desperately. Your pack was there. They arrived with me trying to help. But by the time your Alpha showed up with reinforcements, the rogues had vanished, and all that was left were our wolves standing over your dead. We looked guilty. You are guilty, I insisted, but my voice had lost its certainty. You were encroaching on our territory. You were planning to challenge Dietrich. Yes, Kaspar admitted. I won't pretend otherwise. We were desperate, and I was willing to fight for what my pack needed. But I never wanted a massacre. I never wanted to kill wolves who were just protecting their home. And I certainly never wanted to kill your mate and earn your eternal hatred in the process. I sat there, my mind reeling, trying to process what he was saying. Could it be true? Could the moon have seen something I hadn't, known something I didn't? The rogues, I said slowly. Why would they attack our scouts? To start a war, Kaspar said grimly. Think about it. Your pack and mine, both bloodied and weakened, fighting each other. Who benefits from that? Thibaut, I whispered, understanding dawning. Thibaut, Kaspar confirmed. We've been tracking reports of his movements. He's been organizing rogue packs, consolidating power. He wants to return to these territories, but he needs the existing packs out of the way first. What better way than to have us destroy each other? I pressed my hands to my face, feeling tears burn behind my eyes. Could this be real? Had I spent weeks hating Kaspar for something he didn't do? Had Wendelin died not in honorable combat but in an ambush meant to manipulate us all? How do I know you're telling the truth? Asked, my voice breaking. You don't, Kaspar said. Not for certain. But the bond. The moon wouldn't link you to me if I were truly guilty of such dishonor. Would she? That was the question, wasn't it? Did I trust the moon's wisdom, or did I trust my own eyes, my own grief? I saw you standing over him, I said. I saw his blood on your fur. Because I'd been fighting. Because I'd tried to help him. Kaspar's voice was gentle now. Adelheid, I can't change what you saw. I can't erase your grief. But I can tell you the truth, and I can offer you proof. What proof? Come with me. He led me to one of the larger structures in the camp, a shelter built from logs and stone. Inside, laid out on furs, were 3 bodies in various states of decay. I wrinkled my nose at the smell. The rogues we managed to kill that night, Kaspar explained. I kept them, hoping we might find some clue to who sent them. Look at their necks. I moved closer, forcing myself to examine the corpses despite my revulsion. Around each of their necks, barely visible in the fur, was a mark, a brand in the shape of a broken moon. Thibaut's symbol, Kaspar said. He marks all his wolves this way, claiming they've broken their bond with the moon and follow only him. I stared at the marks, my heart pounding. This was proof. Not absolute perhaps, but substantial. These weren't just random rogues. They were organized, marked, part of something larger. Why didn't you show this to Dietrich? I demanded. Why didn't you try to explain? And how would that have looked? The Alpha, whose pack had just been slaughtered, showing up at my territory to hear my side of the story. Kaspar shook his head. Dietrich had no reason to trust me. Still doesn't. But you have the bond. Some part of you, whether you want to or not, knows I'm telling the truth. I wanted to deny it, but he was right. Even through my grief and rage, I'd felt it. The bond wouldn't lie. Kaspar wasn't radiating guilt or deception. He was radiating frustration, regret, and a deep, aching sadness that mirrored my own. Even if this is true, I said slowly, even if you didn't kill Wendelin directly, your plans still led to this. If you hadn't been encroaching on our territory, if you hadn't been preparing to challenge Dietrich, if my pack hadn't been driven from our home by a traitor and human hunters, you mean? Kaspar's voice was sharp. How far back do we go, Adelheid? Do I blame the humans? Do I blame Thibaut? Do I blame the moon herself for the cruelty of circumstance? I don't know, I whispered. I don't know anything anymore. We stood there in the dim shelter, the bodies of the rogues between us like a barrier. Finally, Kaspar spoke again, his voice soft. I didn't want this bond any more than you did. When it snapped into place, do you know what my first thought was? That the moon had finally given me a mate, only to make sure she would hate me forever. It felt like cosmic punishment. For what? For all the choices I've made. For leading my pack into desperation. For not being able to protect them better. For being too proud to beg the other alphas for help until it was too late. He laughed, but it was bitter. The moon has a sense of humor, it seems. Despite everything, I felt a flicker of understanding. He was suffering too. The bond worked both ways after all. My rejection of him, my hatred, my grief. He felt all of it, just as I felt his regret and pain. What do we do now? Yes. That depends on you, Kaspar said. I won't force the bond. I won't demand you accept me. But I will ask you to consider the truth. And I will ask you to help me stop Thibaut before more wolves die in his manipulations. You want an alliance. I want justice. For Wendelin, for your fallen wolves, for mine. Thibaut orchestrated this. He's the one who deserves your rage. I looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time since the bond had formed. Beneath the dangerous exterior, I saw a wolf carrying the weight of his pack's survival. A leader who'd made hard choices and lived with the consequences. Someone who, in different circumstances, I might have respected. I need time, I said finally. To think. To talk to my alpha. To process all of this. Take what time you need, Kaspar said. But be careful. If Thibaut learns about our bond, he'll see it as an opportunity. A way to manipulate us both. I nodded, wrapping the cloak tighter around myself. As I turned to leave, Kaspar spoke again. Adelheid. I paused, looking back at him. I'm sorry, he said simply. For your loss. For your pain. For all of it. I know my words don't change anything, but I am truly sorry. The sincerity in his voice made my throat tighten. I couldn't respond, so I just nodded and left, shifting back to my wolf form and running into the night. The journey back to my territory was long and gave me too much time to think. Everything I'd believed for weeks had been turned on its head. Wendelin hadn't died in honorable combat against a rival pack. He'd been murdered by rogues in a calculated ambush. Kaspar wasn't the villain I'd made him out to be. Just another alpha trying to protect his people. And the mate bond. It didn't seem quite as cruel if Kaspar truly was innocent. But innocent or not, Wendelin was still dead. And I still loved him. How could I move forward with Kaspar when my heart belonged to a ghost? When I reached our territory, I went straight to Dietrich. The alpha was in his den with his mate, Giselle, but he ushered me in immediately when he saw the state I was in. I told him everything. Kaspar's story, the marked rogues, Thibaut's involvement. Dietrich listened intently, his expression growing darker with each revelation. Thibaut, he said when I finished. I haven't heard that name in years. Kaspar said he was exiled from our pack 20 years ago. Do you remember him? I was young then, barely old enough to be considered for beta. But yes, I remember. He was brilliant but unstable, obsessed with humans and their technology. He believed we should study them, adopt their ways to make ourselves stronger. The elders disagreed. They banished him for killing a human child. He claimed it was an accident during a hunt, but there were suspicions. What kind of suspicions? that he'd done it deliberately. To see how the humans would react, how they'd hunt us in return. Thibaut was always conducting experiments, pushing boundaries. The child's death was the final straw. Dietrich's expression was grim. If he's really organizing rogue packs and orchestrating attacks, he's more dangerous than we imagined. Kaspar wants to form an alliance. To stop Thibaut before he starts an all-out war. Do you trust him? It was the question I'd been asking myself the entire journey home. Did I trust Kaspar? The bond says I can, I answered carefully. And the evidence supports his story. But my heart still grieves Wendelin, Dietrich finished gently. That's natural, Adelheid. The mate bond doesn't erase what you felt before. It doesn't diminish your love for Wendelin. Then how do I move forward? How do I accept a new mate when I'm still mourning the old one? One day at a time, Giselle said softly. It was the first time she'd spoken. And by remembering that Wendelin would want you to be happy. He'd want you to live, not spend the rest of your life trapped in grief. Would he? I wanted to believe that, but it felt like a betrayal even thinking it. I'll call a council, Dietrich decided. We need to discuss this threat from Thibaut. And we need to decide whether to accept Kaspar's offer of alliance. The council meeting was held the next evening, with all the senior wolves in attendance. Dietrich presented the information I'd gathered, and the debate that followed was fierce. Some wolves, like Burkhard, were adamant that we couldn't trust the Schattenrudel. This could be an elaborate deception, he argued. A way to get us to lower our guard. Others, like Apollonia, saw the wisdom in alliance. The mate bond is sacred, she reminded the council. If the moon has tied Adelheid to Kaspar, there's a reason. We ignore that at our peril. In the end, Dietrich made the decision. We'll meet with Kaspar. Neutral ground, with witnesses from both packs. We'll hear him out, see his evidence, and decide from there. But we go prepared for treachery. The meeting was arranged for 3 days hence, in a meadow that lay between our territories. I spent those days in a state of anxious anticipation, unable to eat, unable to settle. The bond pulled at me constantly, growing stronger now that I'd seen Kaspar again, now that some of my hatred had dissolved into uncertainty. When the day arrived, I went with Dietrich and 20 of our strongest wolves. Kaspar came with an equal number, and the two groups faced each other across the meadow, tension thick in the air. Kaspar stepped forward and Dietrich did the same. The two alphas regarded each other, neither backing down, neither showing fear. You asked for this meeting, Dietrich said. Speak. Kaspar glanced at me briefly, and I felt the bond pulse between us, a reminder of the connection neither of us had chosen. Then he turned back to Dietrich. 23 days ago, 7 of your wolves died in what appeared to be an attack by my pack. I'm here to tell you that appearance was orchestrated. We were not the ones who killed your wolves. We arrived in the middle of an ambush by rogue wolves marked with Thibaut's symbol. Dietrich's eyes narrowed at the mention of Thibaut, but he said nothing, letting Kaspar continue. Thibaut has been organizing rogue packs for months, maybe longer. His goal is to weaken the established packs in these territories so he can sweep in and take control. The attack on your scouts was designed to make you believe my pack was responsible, to start a war between us that would leave both packs vulnerable. You have proof of this. Burkhard demanded from behind Dietrich. In response, Kaspar gestured to 2 of his wolves, who dragged forward the bodies I'd seen, the 3 rogues with the broken moon brand. They laid them out in the grass between the 2 groups, and I heard the sharp intake of breath from our wolves as they saw the marks. These are 3 of the rogues we killed that night, Kaspar explained. All bear Thibaut's mark. All have been identified by members of my pack who remember them from before. Wolves who were exiled from various packs over the years for crimes ranging from murder to oath-breaking. Old Apollonia moved forward, her ancient eyes examining the bodies carefully. She looked at the marks, sniffed the air around them, even touched their cold skin with her gnarled fingers. Finally, she straightened and turned to Dietrich. He speaks truth, she said. These bears the mark of the oath-breakers, those who reject the moon's law. And they're sent. She paused, closing her eyes as if remembering. I remember Thibaut's scent from 20 years ago. It's faint, but it's there. He handled these wolves recently. Murmurs rippled through both groups. Burkhard looked furious, but even he couldn't argue with Apollonia's wisdom. She'd never been wrong, not in 3 centuries. Even if this is true, Dietrich said carefully, it doesn't absolve the fact that your pack has been encroaching on our territory. That you came here with the intention of challenging me for control. You're right, Kaspar said, and his honesty seemed to surprise everyone. My pack was displaced from our home. We're refugees, and I've made choices I'm not proud of in trying to save them. I was willing to challenge you because I saw no other option. But I never wanted war. I never wanted innocent blood spilled. What do you want now? Dietrich asked. Alliance, Kaspar said simply. Thibaut is the real enemy. He'll keep orchestrating attacks, keep manipulating us against each other until we're too weak to resist him. But if we work together, if we pool our resources and our warriors, we can find him and end this before more wolves die. And what about your pack's territory needs? This came from Urs, one of the other elders. Even if we deal with Thibaut, you still need land. You still need resources. We do, Kaspar admitted. And I propose this. Let my pack settle in the disputed northern section of your territory. It's largely uninhabited, difficult terrain that you don't actively use. In exchange, my wolves will help defend your borders, share our hunting grounds and resources, and fight alongside you against Thibaut. Dietrich considered this, his expression thoughtful. You're asking me to invite a rival pack into our territory, to trust wolves who've been seen as enemies. That's no small thing. I'm asking you to see past old grievances to the larger threat, Kaspar said. And I'm offering something more as a gesture of good faith. He turned and gestured to one of his wolves, who came forward carrying a wooden box. Kaspar opened it, revealing papers, maps, and what looked like journals. Intelligence, Kaspar explained. Everything we've gathered about Thibaut's movements, his known associates, the locations of rogue pack gatherings. We've been tracking him for months. This information is yours, regardless of whether you accept the alliance. It was a powerful gesture, one that even Burkhard couldn't dismiss as manipulation. If Kaspar truly wanted to deceive us, he wouldn't hand over valuable intelligence for nothing in return. Dietrich looked at me. Adelheid, you've spent time with Kaspar. You have the mate bond. What does your instinct tell you? All eyes turned to me, and I felt the weight of the moment. My words could determine whether our packs went to war or formed an alliance. Whether Thibaut would be stopped or allowed to continue his machinations. I took a deep breath and stepped forward, standing between the 2 alphas. I looked at Kaspar, really looked at him, and opened myself to the bond for the first time since it had formed. I felt his sincerity, his desperation to protect his pack, his genuine regret for the circumstances that had brought us here. And beneath it all, I felt something else, a profound loneliness, a longing that mirrored my own. I believe him, I said clearly, my voice carrying across the meadow. The bond doesn't lie. He's telling the truth about the ambush, about Thibaut, about wanting alliance over war. Even though you believe he cost you your mate. Burkhard challenged. He didn't cost me Wendelin, I said, and speaking the words aloud made them real, made them true. Thibaut did. And Thibaut will keep killing unless we stop him. My grief doesn't change that. My pain doesn't change that. Wendelin died defending this pack, and the best way I can honor his memory is to make sure his death wasn't in vain. Dietrich nodded slowly, then extended his hand to Kaspar. Alliance, then. Your pack may settle in the northern territory. We'll work together to stop Thibaut. But know this, if you betray us, if this turns out to be deception, there will be nowhere you can hide. I'll hunt you to the ends of the earth. Understood, Kaspar said, gripping Dietrich's hand. And I swear on the moon herself, we will not betray this trust. The 2 alphas held the grip for a long moment, then released. Around us, wolves from both packs slowly relaxed, the immediate threat of violence dissipating. "We'll hold a proper ceremony in 3 days," Dietrich announced, "to formalize the alliance and welcome the Schattenrudel into our territory. Until then, we'll begin coordinating our search for Thibaut." As the groups began to mingle cautiously, Kaspar approached me. We stood together in awkward silence for a moment before he spoke. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for speaking on my behalf. I know it wasn't easy." "It was the truth," I said simply. "That doesn't mean things are suddenly fine between us. The bond is one thing, but trust has to be earned." "I know. And I'll spend however long it takes to earn yours." He hesitated, then added, "Would you walk with me? Just for a few minutes. I promise, no pressure, no expectations. I just like to talk. Away from all of this." Every instinct screamed at me to refuse, to maintain distance, to protect my grieving heart. But the bond pulled at me, and beneath my resistance, I felt curiosity. Who was Kaspar really? What had his life been like before everything fell apart? "All right," I heard myself say. "A short walk." We moved away from the main groups, walking along the edge of the meadow where wildflowers grew in riot of color. For a while, neither of us spoke, and the silence was surprisingly comfortable. Finally, Kaspar broke it. "Tell me about Wendelin. What was he like?" The question surprised me so much I stopped walking. "Why would you want to know about him?" "Because he was important to you. Because his memory deserves to be honored, not ignored." Kaspar's gold eyes were sincere. "And because if we're going to have any chance of making this bond work, I need to understand what you lost." "Who you lost?" Tears stung my eyes, but they weren't entirely painful. For the first time since Wendelin's death, someone was asking me to remember him not as a tragedy but as a person. "He was kind," I said softly. "Strong but gentle. He made me laugh even when I didn't want to. He was carving a cradle for the cubs we wanted to have. Did you know that? Working on it every night. His hands so careful, so patient. He sounds like he was a good mate." "The best," I whispered. "He was my best friend before he was my mate. We grew up together, played together as cubs. Loving him was the easiest thing I'd ever done." "I'm sorry I couldn't save him," Kaspar said, and his voice was thick with emotion. "I tried. When I saw he was dying, I tried to stop the bleeding, tried to use my alpha power to help him heal. But the wounds were too severe, and by the time you arrived..." He trailed off, shaking his head. "You really tried to help him?" "Yes. Of course I did. He was a warrior defending his territory. There's honor in that, even in war. And..." He paused, seeming to struggle with his words. And something in me knew even then, before the bond snapped into place. Something about that night felt wrong, felt faded. When I knelt beside him and he looked at me, I saw it in his eyes. He knew he was dying. And he said something. My heart stopped. What did he say? He said, "Protect her." His last words were asking me to protect you. Kaspar's voice broke slightly. He didn't even know who I was, didn't know about the bond that was about to form. But he looked at me and knew, somehow, that I would be important to you. And he asked me to keep you safe. I pressed my hand to my mouth, trying to contain the sob that threatened to escape. Wendelin had known. Somehow, in his final moments, he'd known about Kaspar and the bond and the future that was coming. And instead of rage or jealousy, he'd asked his successor to protect me. It was so like him. So perfectly, heartbreakingly like him. "I miss him so much," I whispered. "It feels like there's a hole in my chest where he used to be." "I know," Kaspar said gently. "The bond lets me feel it. Your grief, your pain. It's overwhelming sometimes. You feel what I feel. Not thoughts, but emotions. And you feel mine too, whether you realize it or not." He smiled sadly. "Which means you know I'm not lying when I say I never wanted to cause you pain. that I wish things had been different. Did know. Through the bond, I could feel his sincerity, his regret, his own grief for the circumstances that had brought us together. And I could feel something else too, a carefully controlled desire, a longing that he kept locked away out of respect for my mourning. The bond is getting stronger, I said. Yes, the more time we spend together, the more it will grow. Eventually, fighting it will become difficult. How long do I have? Until what? Until you're forced to accept me. Kaspar shook his head. I won't force anything, Adelheid. Even if the bond drives us both mad, even if it kills us, I won't claim you against your will. You've had enough taken from you. I won't take your choice too. The promise settled something in my chest, eased a fear I hadn't fully acknowledged. He wasn't going to push me. He was going to let me come to him in my own time if I came at all. Thank you, I said softly. We walked in silence for a bit longer, then returned to the main group. The packs were beginning to separate, preparing to return to their respective territories. Dietrich called me over, and I left Kaspar with a nod that felt less hostile than before. How are you holding up? Dietrich asked as we walked back toward our lands. I don't know, I admitted. Everything I thought I knew has been turned upside down. Wendelin is still gone, but now I know it wasn't Kaspar's fault. And the bond. I trailed off, not sure how to explain the complicated tangle of emotions. The bond is pushing you toward him, Dietrich finished. But your heart is still with Wendelin. How do I reconcile that? You don't. Not immediately. Dietrich's voice was kind. You let yourself grieve. You let yourself heal. And you trust that the moon knows what she's doing, even when it doesn't make sense to us. The alliance ceremony 3 days later was a strange, solemn affair. Both packs gathered at the sacred grove where we'd buried Wendelin and the other fallen wolves. It felt appropriate somehow, to formalize the alliance at the site where so much had been lost. Apollonia led the ritual, her ancient voice carrying the weight of centuries as she spoke the old words that bound pack to pack. By moon and blood, by earth and sky, 2 packs become one in purpose if not in name. What threatens one threatens all. What strengthens one strengthens all. From this day forth, the Silberklau and the Schattenrudel stand together. Dietrich and Kaspar each cut their palms and pressed them together, mingling their blood. The symbolism was clear. They were now bound by oath, and to break it would be to break the most sacred of wolf laws. Then came the part I'd been dreading. As the mate-bonded pair that connected both packs, Kaspar and I were asked to perform the binding of hearts, a ritual that didn't complete the mate bond but acknowledged it publicly. We stood facing each other while Apollonia wrapped a silver cord around our joined hands. The entire combined pack watched, over 400 wolves bearing witness. The moon has spoken, Apollonia intoned. She has marked these 2 as destined, as paired, as fated. The bond may not yet be complete, but it is recognized. What the moon has joined, let no wolf put asunder. I looked up at Kaspar, meeting those golden eyes, and felt the bond surge with power at the ritual acknowledgement. His hand was warm in mine, his grip firm but not controlling. And through the bond I felt his emotions as clearly as my own. Hope, fear, determination, and a carefully banked affection that he refused to impose on me. I will honor this bond, Kaspar said, speaking the ritual words. I will protect her, provide for her, and put her needs above my own. This I swear on the moon herself. My turn. The words stuck in my throat for a moment, but then I thought of Wendelin's last words. Protect her. He'd passed that duty to Kaspar, had somehow known this was meant to be. Drawing strength from that, I spoke. I will honor this bond, I said, my voice quieter but clear. I will respect him, stand beside him, and trust in the moon's wisdom. This I swear. Apollonia unwrapped the cord, and it was done. We weren't fully mated, but we were publicly acknowledged as bound. The packs erupted in howls. Not quite celebration, but acknowledgement. Recognition that something significant had occurred. After the ceremony, a feast was held. Wolves from both packs mingled, sharing food and stories, beginning the slow process of becoming comfortable with each other. I found myself watching Kaspar as he moved through the crowd, speaking with our wolves, answering questions, being respectful of the boundaries that still existed. "He's trying very hard," Giselle said, appearing at my elbow with a cup of mead. I took it gratefully and drank. "He is. How do you feel about him?" "Confused," I admitted. Part of me still wants to hate him, even though I know logically he didn't kill Wendelin. Part of me is drawn to him because of the bond. And part of me just feels tired. Tired of grieving, tired of fighting fate, tired of being torn in two. "Then maybe it's time to stop fighting," Giselle suggested gently. "I'm not saying you have to fall into his arms tomorrow. But maybe you could stop seeing him as the enemy and start seeing him as what he is, your mate." "I already had a mate. And you'll always love Wendelin. That doesn't change." "But Adelheid." She turned to face me fully, her expression serious. "You're 23 years old. You have decades, maybe a century of life ahead of you. Are you really going to spend all of it alone, punishing yourself and Kaspar for something neither of you could control?" Before I could answer, a howl split the night, not celebratory but alarmed. A warning. The feast dissolved into organized chaos as warriors immediately took defensive positions. Dietrich and Kaspar moved to the center of the gathering, both alphas on high alert. A scout raced into the clearing, shifting from wolf to human form as he ran. "Rogues," he gasped. "At least 50 of them, maybe more, approaching from the east. They're moving fast, and they're organized." "Thibaut," Kaspar growled. "He knows about the alliance. He's coming to test us." "Formation positions," Dietrich commanded. "Warriors to the front, elders and young to the center. We defend together." The packs moved with practiced efficiency, forming defensive lines. I shifted to my wolf form, my silver-gray fur bristling with adrenaline. Around me, over 300 wolves prepared for battle. The rogues emerged from the forest like shadows, their eyes reflecting the firelight, their bodies lean and scarred from hard living. And at their center, directing them with hand signals, was a wolf I recognized from old pack drawings, Thibaut. He was smaller than I'd expected, his brown fur streaked with gray, his body twisted with age. But his eyes burned with a fanatical intelligence that made my skin crawl even in wolf form. He shifted to human, standing naked and unashamed before our combined forces. "Well, well," he said, his voice carrying despite its reedy quality. "The silver clow and Schattenrudel, playing at friendship. How touching. How futile." "This ends tonight, Thibaut," Dietrich called back. "Surrender your rogues and face justice for the wolves you've killed." Thibaut laughed, the sound like bones rattling. "Justice. You speak of justice. I who was exiled for seeking knowledge. I who tried to advance our kind beyond primitive pack politics." "You killed a human child," old Apollonia said, her voice cutting through the night. "You broke the oldest laws." "I conducted an experiment," Thibaut corrected, "to see how humans would respond. And I learned so much. I learned their weapons, their tactics, their weaknesses. I could have made us strong enough to rule these mountains openly. But no, you fools clung to your old ways, you're hiding, you're cowering in the shadows." "You're insane," Kaspar said flatly. "I'm evolved," Thibaut countered. "And soon, these territories will belong to me and those intelligent enough to follow my vision. Your alliance means nothing. I'll crush you both, take your lands, and build something greater from the ruins." "Then come try," Dietrich growled. Thibaut smiled, and it was the smile of a wolf who'd planned for every contingency. He raised his hand, and from the forest emerged more rogues, at least 100 additional wolves, surrounding us on all sides. We were outnumbered 2-1. "Attack," Thibaut commanded. The battle that followed was chaos and blood and fury. Rogues crashed into our defensive lines, and suddenly there was no time for thought, only instinct. I fought beside wolves from both packs, my teeth finding flesh, my claws tearing into attackers. Through the madness, I was always aware of Kaspar. The bond made me hyper-aware of his position, his status, his well-being. I watched as he tore through rogues with terrifying efficiency. His alpha power making him faster, stronger, more dangerous than the others. Then I saw it. 3 rogues breaking through the defensive line, heading straight for the protected center where the elders stood. Heading for Apollonia. I didn't think. I just ran. I intercepted the first rogue, tackling him sideways and ripping out his throat before he knew what hit him. The second turned on me, and we grappled, rolling through the dirt, snapping and clawing. I felt teeth sink into my shoulder and howled in pain, but managed to twist around and catch his leg, breaking it with a savage shake of my head. The third rogue was almost to Apollonia when a massive midnight form slammed into him from the side. Kaspar, having seen the same threat I had fought his way across the battle to protect the elder. Together, we formed a protective circle around Apollonia and the other elders, fighting back to back without needing to communicate. The bond made us eerily synchronized, each knowing where the other would move, what the other would do. Behind you! I somehow knew Kaspar was warning me through the bond, and I spun just in time to catch a rogue leaping for my throat. Left! I sent back, and he ducked beneath a swipe that would have decapitated him. We fought like that for what felt like hours, moving as one, protecting each other and the vulnerable wolves behind us. Around us, I could see the alliance working. Silberklau and Schattenrudel fighting together, covering each other's weaknesses, combining their strengths. Thibaut had planned for many things, but he hadn't planned for this. For 2 packs that actually worked together instead of competing. Slowly, inevitably, the tide turned. The rogues were numerous but poorly coordinated. Our combined packs were outnumbered but organized, disciplined, unified. One by one, the rogues began to fall or flee. Finally, Dietrich and Kaspar, working together, cornered Thibaut himself. The old wolf snarled and spat, trying to fight, but age and madness had weakened him. In the end, it was almost anticlimactic how easily they brought him down. As dawn broke over the mountains, painting the sky gold and pink, the battle ended. We'd won, but the cost was high. At least 20 wolves lay dead, and dozens more were injured. Both packs had suffered losses. I shifted back to human form, exhausted and bleeding from multiple wounds. My shoulder throbbed where the rogue had bitten me, and I could feel bruises forming all over my body. Kaspar approached, also in human form, also bloodied but alive. Without thinking, without hesitating, I threw my arms around him. He stiffened in surprise, then carefully wrapped his arms around me, holding me like I was something precious that might break. "You saved Apollonia," I said into his chest. "You saw the threat and you came. You saw it first," he pointed out. "You saved her before I even got there. We did it together." "Yes," he agreed softly. "Together." We stood like that for a long moment, the bond humming contentedly between us, both of us too tired to maintain the walls we'd built. Around us, wolves from both packs were tending to the wounded, securing prisoners, counting the dead. The work of survival continued. Finally, I pulled back enough to look up at him. His golden eyes were soft, concerned, gentle. "Thank you," I said, "for fighting beside me, for protecting our people. Always," he promised. "For as long as you'll let me." And standing there in the dawn light, covered in blood and exhausted beyond measure, I felt something shift inside me. Not love, not yet. I still loved Wendelin, probably always would. But something else. Trust maybe. Or the beginnings of acceptance. The moon had given me this bond for a reason. And tonight had shown me that maybe, just maybe, she knew what she was doing. The weeks after the battle brought significant changes. Thibaut and his closest followers were executed according to pack law, swift and merciful, despite the cruelty they'd shown. The remaining rogues were given a choice. Join one of the packs and submit to our laws, or leave the territories forever. Most chose to leave. The Schattenrudel officially moved into the Northern Territory, and slowly, the two packs began to truly merge. It wasn't always smooth. There were disputes over hunting grounds, disagreements about traditions, clashes between wolves who'd only recently been enemies. But both Dietrich and Kaspar were committed to making it work, and their leadership set the tone. As for me and Kaspar, we took things slowly. He gave me space when I needed it, but was there when I didn't. We spent time together learning each other, building something that felt less like obligation and more like choice. He told me about his life before the displacement, about the home his pack had lost, about the weight of responsibility he carried for every wolf under his protection. I told him about Wendelin, about our dreams for the future, about the hole his death had left in my life. "I'll never try to replace him," Kaspar said one evening as we sat by the fire in his den. "What you had with Wendelin was special, and his memory deserves to be honored." "I know," I said. "And I'm beginning to understand that accepting you doesn't mean betraying him. The heart is bigger than we think. It has room for more than one love." Kaspar reached out slowly, telegraphing his movements, and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. The gesture was so gentle, so careful, that I felt my eyes sting with tears. "I'm falling in love with you," he admitted quietly. "I've been trying not to, trying to give you space, but the bond makes it impossible. Every day I feel what you feel, see your strength, your loyalty, your capacity for love even in the midst of grief. How could I not fall for you?" "Kaspar, you don't have to say anything," he interrupted quickly. "I'm not asking for anything. I wanted you to know. I wanted to be honest." I looked at him, really looked at him. At this wolf who'd been patient beyond measure, who'd given me time and space and understanding, who'd fought beside me, protected what I loved, honored Wendelin's memory instead of being jealous of it. "I'm not there yet," I said slowly. "I'm not ready to say I love you, but I'm not opposed to the possibility anymore. Does that make sense?" "Perfect sense," he said, and his smile was like sunrise. "Take all the time you need. I'll be here." Months passed. The seasons changed from winter to spring, spring to summer. The packs continued to integrate, and to my surprise it worked. We were stronger together than apart, just as the alliance had promised. I found myself spending more and more time with Kaspar. We hunted together, ran together, planned together. He made me laugh, which I hadn't thought possible in those dark days after Wendelin's death. He challenged me intellectually, respected me as an equal, treated me like I was precious without making me feel fragile. And slowly, so slowly I barely noticed it happening, my heart began to heal. The hole Wendelin had left would never fully close. I didn't want it to. His memory was a part of me, a piece of my past that shaped who I was. But around that old wound, new growth was forming. New hope, new love. One evening, nearly a year after Wendelin's death, I went to his grave. I did this regularly, talking to him, keeping him updated on pack events, on my life. It helped somehow to feel like he was still part of things. "I think I'm ready," I told his headstone, my hand resting on the cool granite. "Ready to accept the mate bond with Kaspar. Ready to move forward. I'll always love you, Wendelin. You'll always be my first mate, my first love. But I think you'd want me to be happy. And Kaspar makes me happy." The wind rustled through the trees, and I chose to believe it was Wendelin's approval. That night I went to Kaspar's den. He opened the door, surprise and hope warring on his face when he saw me. "Adelheid, is everything all right? I want to complete the bond," I said without preamble. "If you're still willing." His eyes widened. "Are you sure? I don't want you to feel pressured or—" "I'm sure," I interrupted. "I've thought about this, really thought about it. And I choose you, Kaspar. Not because the moon demands it, but because I want to. Because you've proven yourself worthy of trust, of respect, of love." "Do you love me?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. I stepped closer, reaching up to cup his face in my hands. "I'm falling. Not the same way I fell for Wendelin. That was easy, natural, like breathing. This is different. Harder, more conscious, more chosen. But yes, I'm falling in love with you." He kissed me then, and it was like lightning striking, like coming home, like every cliché I'd ever heard about true mates. The bond, which had been incomplete for a year, snapped fully into place, and suddenly I could feel everything. His love, his relief, his joy, his desire. And beneath it all, a rightness that confirmed what I'd already known. The moon had been right all along. The final mate ceremony was held under the full moon, with both packs present. This time there was no awkwardness, no grief hanging over the proceedings. This was a celebration. Apollonia performed the ritual, binding our hands with the silver cord one final time. "The moon has spoken and her children have answered," she intoned. "The bond is complete, the circle is closed. May their union bring strength to both packs, wisdom to their decisions, and peace to their hearts." When we kissed to seal the bond, the combined packs erupted in howls of celebration. And this time I howled with them, my heart full in a way I hadn't thought possible again. Later, as we stood together watching our packs mingle and celebrate, Kaspar pulled me close. "Thank you," he said softly, "for giving me a chance. For choosing me despite everything." "Thank you for being patient," I replied. "For understanding that grief doesn't follow a timeline, and that accepting you didn't mean forgetting Wendelin." "He'll always be part of your story," Kaspar said. "And therefore part of ours. I honor that." I turned in his arms to face him fully. "Tell me something. That night, when you knelt beside Wendelin and he told you to protect me. Did you know? Did you feel the bond about to form?" Kaspar thought for a moment, then nodded. "I felt something. Pull, a certainty. At the time, I thought it was just the weight of his dying wish. But looking back, yes, think I knew. Think he knew. And I think that's why he chose those words. He was giving me to you," I whispered. "Passing me into your care. He was ensuring you'd be protected. That you wouldn't be alone." Kaspar's golden eyes shimmered with emotion. "It was his final act of love for you." We stood together in silence, honoring Wendelin's memory, acknowledging his gift. And I felt, deep in my soul, his approval. He'd wanted me to be happy. He'd wanted me to be safe. And in his last moments, he'd done what he could to ensure both. The moon hung bright and full above us, bathing the celebration in silver light. And I thought about how the moon never lies, how fate works in ways we can't always understand at first, how love can come more than once if we're brave enough to open our hearts again. "What are you thinking?" Kaspar asked. I smiled up at him. This wolf who'd been my enemy and was now my mate, this man who'd killed my love but earned my trust. "I'm thinking that the moon knew what she was doing all along," I said. "Even when it seemed cruel, even when I couldn't see the purpose. She was leading me here. To this moment. To you. No regrets. I'll always regret that Wendelin died. I'll always miss what we could have had together." Took a breath. "But I don't regret this. I don't regret us. The moon gave me two great loves in one lifetime. How many wolves can say that?" Kaspar pulled me closer, and I let myself rest in his embrace, feeling safe, feeling cherished, feeling like I'd finally come home. The path hadn't been easy. The moon had asked hard things of me. To grieve, to forgive, to trust, to love again. But standing here now, I understood. Sometimes the greatest gifts come wrapped in the darkest packages. Sometimes destiny looks like disaster before revealing itself as deliverance. He'd killed my mate. Or so I'd thought. But the truth was more complicated, more nuanced, more proof that things are rarely as simple as they first appear. The moon had marked him as my destiny because she could see what I couldn't. That Kaspar was the wolf I needed, the mate who would challenge me and support me and love me through the darkest times. And I was ready. Ready to honor Wendelin's memory by living fully. Ready to embrace this new love without guilt. Ready to trust the moon's wisdom, even when it seemed impossible. Above us, the moon shone bright and steady, as she had for countless generations, watching over her children, guiding them through darkness into light. The morning sun filtered through the curtains of our den, casting golden patterns across the floor. I stirred, feeling the warmth of Kaspar beside me. his arm draped protectively across my swollen belly. 2 years. It had been 2 years since that terrible transformative night when Wendelin died and my world shattered. 2 years since the moon had marked Kaspar as my destiny, and I'd thought it the cruelest joke the universe could play. Now, carrying our first cub, I understood it had been mercy. Kaspar's eyes opened, those molten gold eyes that I'd once associated with pain but now saw as home. He smiled sleepily and placed his hand over mine on my belly. "Good morning," he murmured. "How are you feeling?" "Large," I said with a laugh. "And hungry. Always hungry." "I'll make breakfast," he said, starting to rise, but I caught his hand. "Kaspar." He looked back at me, concern flickering across his face. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. I wanted to tell you something." I took a breath, gathering my courage. "I'm going to visit Wendelin's grave today. To tell him about the baby. And I want you to come with me." For a moment, uncertainty crossed Kaspar's features. In the 2 years we'd been together, he'd always given me space for my private moments with Wendelin's memory. He'd never intruded, never asked to be included in that part of my life. "Are you sure?" he asked carefully. "I'm sure. You're my mate, the father of my child. And Wendelin. He gave you to me in a way. He trusted you with his last breath. It feels right that you should be there when I tell him he's going to be an uncle of sorts." Kaspar's eyes grew bright with emotion. "I'd be honored." Later that morning we walked together to the sacred grove. It was spring, and wildflowers covered the ground in a riot of color. Purple alpine asters, yellow mountain avens, white edelweiss. Nature's way of celebrating life even in a place of death. We stood together before Wendelin's headstone, which had weathered beautifully, the carved runes still clear and deep. I'd chosen words from an ancient prayer. He ran with honor, loved with courage, and died defending those he cherished. "Hello, old friend," I said softly, my hand resting on the cool stone. "I brought someone with me today. I think you know him." Kaspar shifted beside me, and when he spoke, his voice was respectful, humble. "Wendelin. I never knew you in life, but I've learned who you were through Adelheid's stories. You were a good wolf, a good mate. And I want to thank you for your last words, for trusting me with her protection. I hope I've honored that trust." I squeezed Kaspar's hand, then continued. "We're going to have a cub. In about 2 months if the healers are right. We're hoping for a boy, and if it is..." I paused, emotion catching in my throat. "If it's a boy, we're naming him Wendelin, after you. So that your name lives on. So that the cub will grow up knowing about the brave wolf who came before, who made it possible for his parents to find each other." The wind rustled through the trees, and a single white edelweiss petal drifted down to land on the headstone. I chose to believe it was a sign, Wendelin's blessing from wherever his spirit ran now. "I still love you," I whispered. "That hasn't changed and never will. But I love Kaspar too, in a different way. Thank you for understanding. Thank you for giving me to someone who would cherish me the way you did." We stood in silence for a while, paying our respects, letting the peace of the grove settle over us. Then Kaspar spoke again, his voice steady and clear. "I promise you, Wendelin, that your mate, our mate, will always be safe. That your namesake will grow up knowing honor and courage. That your memory will be respected in our home. This I swear on the moon herself." As we turned to leave, I glanced back one last time. The morning sun caught the headstone, making the carved runes glow like fire. And I felt it, a sense of completion, of circles closing, of blessings given. Wendelin was at peace. And so was I. When our son was born 2 months later, he came into the world howling his displeasure at the bright lights and strange smells. He was perfect, 10 fingers, 10 toes, a shock of dark hair that would likely lighten as he grew, and when he finally opened his eyes, they were the deep brown of mountain earth. Wendelin's eyes. I cried when I saw them, but they were tears of joy, not grief. The moon had given us a gift, a piece of my first mate living on in my son with my second mate. It was poetry. It was justice. It was love in its most perfect form. Kaspar held our son with the careful reverence of a wolf who'd never dared dream of having a family. His massive hands were so gentle, cradling the tiny bundle like he was made of spun glass. "Hello, Wendelin," he whispered. "Welcome to the pack, little one. You have a legacy to live up to, but don't worry. We'll help you every step of the way." The entire combined pack came to celebrate the birth, bringing gifts and blessings. Dietrich and Giselle arrived with a hand-carved cradle, the very one that Wendelin had been making before he died. Somehow, Giselle had found it, finished it, and preserved it all these years. "He would have wanted his namesake to have it," Giselle said, pressing the cradle into my hands. Old Apollonia came last, moving slowly on legs that had carried her through more than 3 centuries. She looked at the baby with eyes that had seen generations come and go, and she smiled. "The moon works in mysterious ways," she said, touching the baby's forehead with one gnarled finger. "This child is proof. Born from loss, named for the dead, but carrying forward life and hope. He'll be special, this one. Mark my words." As the celebration continued around us, Kaspar and I sat together in the corner of our den, our son sleeping peacefully between us. I leaned my head on Kaspar's shoulder, feeling utterly content for the first time since Wendelin's death. "Are you happy?" Kaspar asked softly. I considered the question. Was I happy? I was missing a piece of my heart that would never fully heal. I carried grief alongside my joy. But yes, I was happy. "I am," I said. "Happier than I thought possible. You did that. You and our son and time and the moon's wisdom. You gave me a reason to keep living, to keep loving, to believe in second chances." "You did the same for me," Kaspar said. "I was so lost before you, Adelheid. Drowning in responsibility and desperation. You gave me hope. You gave me purpose beyond just survival. We saved each other then." "Yes, I think we did." Little Wendelin stirred in his sleep, making the tiny snuffling sounds that newborns make. I watched him, this perfect blend of past and present, and I thought about everything that had led to this moment. The moon had marked Kaspar as my destiny on the worst night of my life. I'd thought her cruel. I'd thought her wrong. I'd railed against fate and fought the bond and wished for death rather than acceptance. But the moon had known. She'd seen the full picture when I could only see my pain. She'd known that Kaspar would heal me, that I would heal him, that together we would create something stronger than either of us could have built alone. She'd known that sometimes the person who seems like your enemy is actually your salvation. She'd known that the heart is vast enough to hold multiple loves, that honoring the dead doesn't mean refusing to live, that destiny isn't always pretty but it's always purpose. I'm standing on the eastern ridge of our territory, watching the sun paint the mountains gold. Little Wendelin, not so little anymore at 5 years old, plays in the meadow below with his younger sister, Ilara, their laughter carrying on the wind. Both children shift back and forth between human and wolf form with the easy grace of youth, chasing butterflies and wrestling in the grass. Kaspar stands beside me, his hand in mine, and we watch our children play. The combined pack, now simply known as the Bergwachter Silberklau, has flourished. The territories are peaceful. Thibaut's threat is a distant memory. New cubs are born every year, representing both bloodlines, the future of our people. I still visit Wendelin's grave regularly. I still tell him about the children, about pack politics, about my life. And I still love him, in the way you love a chapter of your life that shaped you fundamentally. But I'm no longer defined by his loss. I'm defined by what I chose to do with that loss. How I chose to honor him by living fully, by loving again, by trusting in the moon's wisdom even when it seemed impossible. "What are you thinking about?" Kaspar asks, pulling me from my reverie. "Everything," I say. "The journey that brought us here. How much has changed. How much I've changed. Do you regret any of it?" "Not the outcome," I say carefully. "I regret Wendelin's death. I regret the pain we all went through. But I don't regret where it led. Does that make sense?" "Perfect sense," Kaspar says, the same words he spoke to me years ago when I first admitted I was falling for him. The path was hard, but the destination was worth it. Below us, young Wendelin shifts to his wolf form, a beautiful gray like his namesake, and howls triumphantly as he catches a butterfly. Ilara, still in human form, scolds him for scaring it away. They're so different, my children, but they're both perfect. Both loved beyond measure. Papa. Mama. Wendelin calls up to us. Come play. Kaspar looks at me, eyebrow raised in question. I grin and shift, my silver-gray wolf emerging, and bound down the hill toward my children. Behind me, I hear Kaspar's laugh before his midnight wolf appears, chasing after us. We play until the sun sets, a family united, a pack at peace, a destiny fulfilled. That night, after the children are asleep, I stand at the window of our den, looking up at the full moon. She's as bright and steady as always, watching over her children, guiding us through our darkest times to our brightest moments. Thank you, I whisper to her, for knowing what I needed even when I didn't, for giving me Kaspar, for not giving up on me when I wanted to give up on everything. The moon doesn't answer. She never does, not in words. But I feel her blessing wash over me like moonlight, and I know she hears. The moon never lies. That's what we're taught. And now, finally, I understand what that truly means. It means that even when fate seems cruel, there's wisdom in it. Even when the path is dark, it leads somewhere bright. Even when we lose everything, we can find everything again, if we're brave enough to trust, to heal, to love once more. He killed my mate, or so I thought. But the truth was so much more complicated, so much more beautiful than my grief would let me see. The moon marked him as my destiny, not as punishment, but as promise. Not as cruelty, but as kindness. Not as an ending, but as a beginning. And I'm so grateful I was brave enough to accept it. This is my story. The story of Adelheid of the Bergwachte Silberklau, who loved twice and lost once and learned that the moon's wisdom runs deeper than our understanding. If you're struggling with loss, with unexpected changes, with a destiny that doesn't look like what you planned, I see you. I've been there. And I'm here to tell you that it's okay to grieve, okay to rage, okay to question. But don't give up. Don't close your heart. Don't reject the future because it doesn't look like the past you loved. The moon knows what she's doing. Fate has a plan. And sometimes the person who seems like your enemy is actually your greatest love story waiting to happen. Trust the journey. Trust the moon. Trust your heart's capacity to heal and grow and love again. Because you deserve that second chance. You deserve that happiness. You deserve to discover that your story isn't over. It's just beginning a new chapter. And who knows? Maybe your chapter will be even more beautiful than anything you could have imagined. The moon never lies. And neither does love. Thank you for listening to my story. For staying with me through the darkness and celebrating with me in the light. Your attention, your time, your emotional investment. These are gifts, and I don't take them lightly. If this story resonated with you, if it made you feel something, hope, pain, healing, love, then please share it. Share it with someone who needs to hear that second chances are real, that healing is possible, that fate can be trusted even when it seems cruel. Leave a comment telling me what part of the story spoke to you. Was it Adelheid's grief? Kaspar's patience? The moment when she finally chose to trust the moon's wisdom? I want to hear from you. I want to know how this story landed in your heart. And here's something special. Tell me the city you're watching from so I can send you a hug. Whether you're in New York or New Delhi, London or Los Angeles, Paris or Port Harcourt, we're all connected by these stories, by our shared humanity, by our capacity to love and lose and love again. Drop your city in the comments. Let me know you were here. Let me send you that virtual embrace, because we all need to know we're not alone in our struggles, in our healing, in our journey toward accepting the destinies we didn't plan but were always meant for. Subscribe if you want more stories like this. Tales of loss and redemption, of unexpected love, of trusting the universe even when it seems to have turned against us. There are so many more stories to tell, so many more journeys to share. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a new chapter, a new tale, a new reminder that your story isn't over yet. And most importantly, if you're in the middle of your own dark chapter right now, If you're facing a loss or a change or a destiny that terrifies you, hold on. Keep going. Trust that the moon knows what she's doing, even when you can't see the full picture yet. Your Kaspar might be waiting just around the corner. Your healing might be closer than you think. Your second chance might be disguised as the very thing you're resisting. Stay brave. Stay open. Stay hopeful. The moon is watching over you too. And she never, ever lies. Until next time, may your path be lit by